Good afternoon, or is it good evening? I suppose it's good evening, ladies and gentlemen, here in Santa Clara, California. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, if you're following this final power panel of the day out there on the World Wide Web. As ever, we have 5 powerhouses of cloud computing, this being the CEO Power Panel. I am not going to steal their thunder. They're going to introduce themselves, starting with the mighty John Keagy.
All righty, mighty. That's great.
As you can see, they're not short of ego.
My name is John Keagy. I'm the CEO of GoGrid. We're the world's first and largest cloud infrastructure pure play. Cloud infrastructure on demand is all we do. You asked me to say something about business in the cloud, and what I've noticed is that it's becoming a reality. It's becoming compelling. It's going beyond the POCs, and it's becoming an IT standard.
Tony.
Hey, I'm Tony Bishop, CEO, founder of Adaptivity. We are the IT blueprint company, and what I would pose to you in terms of business value in the cloud is that it's creating new business paradigms that moves IT from being a support function to a business enablement function.
I feel we'll be revisiting that theme. Kathy.
Hi, good evening. Kathy Minter, I'm president of Cordys in the Americas. And Cordys designs business process as a service, primarily, and cloud orchestration capabilities. And when I think about business value in the cloud, I think about how to use existing cloud technologies to really leverage new business models, which goes around how you're going to provide more value to your customers and your suppliers and your employees, leveraging the cloud to do business better.
Sounds like a good thing, doesn't it? Jay.
Hi, my name is Jay Noble. I'm Director of Cloud Computing with CSC, formerly Computer Sciences Corporation, now down to, we couldn't afford all those letters, so now we're just down to CSC. We bring a vast array of outsourcing, consulting, and business process outsourcing to the market. Recently, I've gotten involved in cloud computing, but really it's been our business for 50 years, helping organizations transition from one technology wave to the next. What we're seeing from a business value in the cloud, the fundamental question for businesses has changed. It's gone from why should I go to the cloud, or if I should go to the cloud, to how do I go to the cloud, doing more with less.
Praveen.
Hi, I'm Praveen Kankariya, CEO of Impetus Technologies. We provide technology services to various best-of-breed technology companies, ranging from the largest search engines, you all know them, to the largest enterprises on the planet. So we see the application of clouds, the thought processes around clouds from different perspectives. In my short opinion, cloud is the ultimate play on sharing computer services.
That seems a good summary.
And my mom taught me that we should share, right?
And a good motivation. So on 2 counts. Well, let's think about that. So sharing everything. Usually sharing everything isn't associated necessarily with business value. It's associated with open source and warm and fuzzy. And how does that all work?
Sharing what's not core to me. So I don't mean to share my identity with others. Not my private data, my core competence, but sharing my infrastructure. Allowing somebody else to aggregate the infrastructure so that I have advantages of variable demand. And ultimately, I think that will be the only way companies, global companies, will be able to serve the bottom of the pyramid.
I like that. Sharing. Tony, sharing the correct lens, the correct prism through which to view all this? Don't say only blueprints for IT. That's cheating.
Well, I think he's correct. I don't know if it's the only dimension to look at it. I think that there's multiple dimensions. You know, with the way business is conducted, the way business communicates and collaborates both with their employees, their customers, and their partners. You know, I think that it's sharing, but it's also a new way of collaborating, a new way of communicating, right?
Well, so collaborating is sharing by that definition, yes? Is collaboration sharing?
Potentially, but...
okay. And potentially not.
I can still share, right? I don't need to share the infrastructure. I can still share and collaborate information.
True.
Although I'd point out that sharing of infrastructure can be an incredibly powerful and very much a driving economic force behind IT. So I don't think that sharing is part of the definition of cloud computing, but for example, when you can share the infrastructure that helps you to manage and automate your IT, but have dedicated servers or dedicated virtual servers on dedicated hardware, you can have all the benefits of sharing and some overhead that 1,000 customers can share in, but have no risk to the integrity of your data or to your performance. It's perfectly dedicated hardware. So.
Jay, in your early days, sorry, you can say your thought.
I was just going to say, from when we're talking about sharing and collaboration, right? That's a kind of a basic human need and human drive, and we will share.
Very existential.
Right,
this is good.
We will share and collaborate to get our jobs done, right? So at the end of the day, I got a paycheck that magically shows up into my account every 2 weeks. I will do whatever necessary to make sure that I can achieve my goals and objectives. I could care less about the underlying infrastructure. But at the end of the day, I need to make sure that I can, process orders or sell stuff or, communicate. And I need all that stuff out of the way. And I think that's kind of the promise of cloud from a compute. We've become so compute dependent over the past 15, 20 years. And they develop these kind of hardened shells that are, I think, now kind of starting to break free and letting us, as business people, start to interact much more naturally and much more effectively without having to worry about, well, if I need to process this, I've got to open up this window and I've got to cancel that out, and then I've got to go over here and I've got to shake my leg and I've got to, right, send off a note to the president. Right? I just need to be able to, right, communicate and collaborate and get my job done. And that, again, that's the promise, and we're starting to see that come to term.
Kathy gave a presentation just earlier from this very podium where she has a use case precisely premised on sharing in the pharmaceutical industry. Why don't you talk the audience through that? Who was here for Kathy's session? Ah, you see, they've all come back.
You brought them all back.
Got them all back.
Well, I just want to say, just in extending what Jay was saying, when I think about sharing, it's about productivity. And sharing can be good, but it also can be bad if it slows down productivity. So it's a controlled sharing in an enterprise, which is what's really important. It's also a great equalizer. So when you share information, it actually allows partners in your ecosystem to get access to information that may not have been accessible otherwise. And so I think it drives innovation because you're giving power and information to an external supply chain or external ecosystem that may not have had it before to provide better services to you as an enterprise and also kind of level the playing field. And the example I was using in my discussion was a pharmaceutical company that's trying to develop more quickly, get a drug to market. And when you think about, not to go through the whole case study, but you think about the guys in the lab that are writing their lab notes, that needs to be captured, the research institutions that have research facilities all around the world, which need to provide steps in that entire process, and then the entire regulatory process to get approval can all be shortened by allowing that collaboration in a controlled way.
Speed, Tony. Is that another prism we should be looking through? Speed to market, speed to everything?
Yeah, I think that, everybody has sort of said it. It almost sounds like when we're explaining they're like foundational building blocks. But if we come back again to the business value and you measure the business value, you heard economics, the agility to get to speed, the ability, right, but controlled. Right, was like sort of where we went. So it's almost like there's enablers to the business value and there's business value that I think we're all sort of saying. I think speed, where and when needed, is critical. One of the things that, depending on, so you pick pharmaceuticals, you can pick financial services, you can pick logistics. Any of the companies that have large scale and mass, the faster they can bring new products to market, right, and or make decisions about ones they don't want to do, I think is absolutely part of the business value, and why cloud, with what everybody has said here, has to have building blocks that enable that.
Jay, do you remember when CSC didn't have anything going on with cloud computing? What was the tipping point for saying that as an organization we have to go with this?
I can't answer that in the broad spectrum because I was one of probably the second employees hired to inaugurate the cloud services. But
so you don't know the internal though?
Don't know the internals, but what I see happening in talking with a number of people that have been in the organization that long, CSC truly is one of the most customer-driven organizations. And when we provide these outsourcing services where we literally rebadge employees, take people on, take over IT infrastructure and all of that, we've been helping customers, again, manage from technology shift to technology shift. So we saw it in our customers starting to ask us, coming to ask us about, okay, what about this cloud stuff? And as I kind of jokingly say, they come to us and say, my CEO's got, read about cloud, and we need 9 pounds of cloud, right? Sell it to me now. So they're trusting us as an advisor and providing this. And those started to bubble up enough and get the attention that the organization realized this is a sea change coming. We need to get in front of it and ride it rather than be consumed by it, because IT outsourcers like ourselves, we could be the dinosaurs of 5, 10 years from now if we don't adopt these new models. The organizations are adopting this one way or the other. They will get this done in this new way from somebody. So CSC, again, probably about 2.5 years ago, made that change and have made that shift. And it's not an easy one. It's very scary for organizations like CSC.
John, what are the disadvantages of a rush to cloud?
Oh my goodness, just rush to the cloud. There are no disadvantages.
Really?
What
is he talking about?
There are always disadvantages on a power panel.
Well, I'd love to hear them.
I mean, 9 types of cloud. I love that idea. Give me the 9 types of cloud.
Yeah.
It's excellent. But what if somebody comes and then blames you as the infrastructure provider for something which they've chosen wrong? They've picked plain wrong. I mean, one of the messages that's running through these sessions is people are now daring to put up the slide that says not everything in the cloud. It's the first conference, the first Cloud Expo, where that's now an okay slide. It's getting as popular as the original cloud diagram on the first conference.
Sure, a lot of people are rushing to the Cloud Expo. And
that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Rush to Cloud Expo. Holy
there's a lot of hype about the cloud, but I don't think that actually enterprise is rushing to the cloud at any type of breakneck pace. Granted, we are growing fantastically, but 95% of the world's compute activity isn't anywhere close to what you'd characterize as cloud computing. And the rush has not started, and I don't think that the streets are full of situations where people have put too much into the cloud and are regretting it. If anything, there's a mass failing of identifying what you should be doing in the cloud now, of getting that reality started, of moving into those POCs, moving beyond the POCs, getting your production load in, not just your development load. I don't think we've really started to have the rubber meet the road yet.
Is that your sense, Tony? Just the beginning? Not even the end of the beginning, just the beginning of the beginning.
Yeah, I would recharacterize his eloquent speaking to state sense of urgency is needed to go to the cloud. What I would state to you, though, is for enterprises where they don't want to say they're getting caught up in a hype or a trend, is yes, there is effective planning that can be done. So in the rushing to the cloud, don't rush, but have a sense of urgency to get there very quickly and do it with the right kind of planning, right? I think that sort of goes with sort of what you're talking about, that trusted advisor kind of role is, okay, help me understand what I got to do to get there, but there is stuff I need to be doing today with it. And again, it comes back to, you started the panel on what is the business value of the cloud. Well, the business value is, definition of insanity, keep doing it the same way, you're going to get the same results. There are new ways to do things, and those ways are proven, they're mature enough, going with where he's hitting, and you got to start taking advantage of it today.
I think that I would add to that, one of the things that we found is that clouds are cloudy. So one of the risks we see in moving to the cloud.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, that's right.
Just hold up one moment.
Yeah, Service Mark, J Noble, CSC, right? Anytime you say it, I get $3. What you're losing is transparency. So the ability to manage IT infrastructure is a pretty well-known science. We've got gobs and gobs of tools to do that, but they all kind of are predicated on the fact that I can go into a room, I can look at my little blinking lights, and I can feel good about it. When you start virtualizing everything, scanning it, scattering it all over the place, I know that Google's got my email account, but they can't tell me where that server is. So the difference between security and transparency is what CSC is really advocating. Security is, I've got a hardened data center with biometric entry points and bulletproof glass and armed guards and all that type of stuff, but it's in China. So from a transparency perspective, I know none of my national security agency, none of my federal agencies can have their data in there. It's really secure, but if I don't know that it's there, I lose that transparency. So what we're advising our clients is you really have to get into that understanding transparency of where things are, what are they doing, who's doing what to them, to be able to provide that to so they can make informed decisions about how to move in that direction.
You know, most of the early tinkering, and I would call it tinkering, that a lot of enterprises are involved in with the cloud is all being driven by the hype. But, and you know, we are working with many such companies who are doing big data implementations. We are helping with that and what have you. But ultimately, if you sort through this hype, it's all about costs. And you can peel this onion in whichever way, you know, oh, I want elasticity, because there is a cost to, creating all the capacity, but it's all about costs. Yeah. And eventually, I think, you know, if I let somebody else aggregate all my needs and can give me economies of scale, I think it has to be much cheaper than doing it myself, than building capacity in-house. And then I'll just take you to an example, you know, and I look to the telecom world. Verizon is the largest carrier in North America with 90 million subscribers. Average revenue per subscriber is $60, $70, $80, some such number. It's, you know, changing with smartphones. You go to a country like India, the most successful carrier is a carrier called Bharti Airtel. I think the August numbers are 141 million subscribers. They're signing up, I think, 5 to 10 million a month. And the average revenue per subscriber is $3 to $4 a month. And everything is outsourced. The IT is outsourced to IBM. The network infrastructure is outsourced. So I cannot technically call it a cloud, but they're all moving in that direction. Their towers are outsourced. Everything is outsourced. They own their spectrum, and they own their marketing. That's all.
But now that seems to take us full circle back to that. Remember the early days of cloud, that was one of the definitions, IT outsourcing. Full stop, end of discussion. Is that coming back?
That's one of the fundamental things that defines cloud in my mind, is does it take CapEx and convert it into OpEx? Do you get rid of the headaches? Can you scale it at the tune of 5 to 10 million wireline or wireless subscribers a month? So I wouldn't say it's necessarily outsourcing, but I do believe that Mark Benioff and Werner Vogels are correct when they characterize attempts to make clouds do-it-yourself, build do-it-yourself clouds. Those are false clouds.
Yeah, I kind of argue a little bit on that point, because I think when you talk about the cloud, I think it's cloud technologies. So the cloud is actually a set of enabling technologies, not a place that you go. And what we haven't talked about at all was using the enabling technologies to create hybrid or private clouds, where you're using the multi-tenancy aspect, you're using the ability to deploy and reduce costs to an infrastructure where you can keep your data secure and then provide linkages and business processes from your enterprise to the cloud. And I think the reality is that's where most businesses are going to land, is in that type of a mixed model.
With the exception of the federal government, who was here for the CTO of CIA this afternoon? Well, if you were not here, you really missed a marvelous session. So let me, on his behalf, so the CTO of your Central Intelligence Agency, not mine, is here. He speaks faster than any other speaker at this conference, and every word he says is worth listening to. He also curses, which I like. Well, you notice that, right? He's a very colourful gentleman.
Was he Indian?
Things, oh, indeed. Absolutely. One of the things he said was that, this is a cost observation, he didn't quarrel with the fact that you could use the public cloud, which sort of astonished people. It had absolutely been considered. But actually, he had to go with open source, or eucalyptus, and whatever, because the cost of doing the kind of things they're running on looking for patterns in our communications are astronomical, you know, into zettabytes almost. And so he was using open source and, of course, using private cloud. So that's quite a big, large set of people who've just gone with their own little definition of enterprise cloud and created, I mean, I like that, I think it's wonderful, but hybrid for business. So here we are probably at a business conference.
But
so hybrid is the norm.
Yeah, the other thing John said, though, is that move from CapEx to OpEx, nobody actually wants to spend capital dollars anymore, right? That just is a huge bugaboo. Nobody wants to invest these big capital dollars. And I think one of the challenges, actually, it's a challenge for adoption, is the fact that that moves to OpEx. Organizations, big organizations, know how to plan for a capital purchase. It's inefficient, and we know the downsides of it. But at the end of the day, their whole operations are set towards buying big chunks of stuff, right? They forecast it in that way. And this whole notion of wait a minute, I'm going to rent this on demand.
So it's too nuanced?
It's just different, right? It's just very different. The desire is there. They want to do that, but they're just not exactly sure how. I mean, it's kind of like two teenagers making out in a car. It's like, okay, it feels really good, but I don't know what to do, right? So how do I move?
Okay, wait, that's another one. No, we won't.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can use that later, the visual, but it's that move of how do I consume this now in a fundamentally different way? Because a lot of CIOs have just spent tens of millions of dollars in upgrading a data center, their own data center. Now all of a sudden this cloud stuff comes in and says you don't need those.
Consume is the key word there.
Right.
And I would put that in as part of the definition of cloud. I'll beg to differ on it being a technology. What this is about is a shift from technologies to services.
All right, go with that a little. Let's see where that takes us.
You asked about, is this about outsourcing? Okay. It's not necessarily, but it is about consuming IT as a service. And is it trouble-free? Is it scalable? Are you hugging your hardware, or do you even think about your hardware? It's a service.
Okay, that's another prism. So what I'm looking for here, as you can see, is the prism through which you can most usefully look at cloud computing if you're an enterprise, and if you're in the audience, rather than as a vendor. One thing that we can all use. That sounds like a good one.
Yeah, well, I think, building on that, but it comes back to, is it how to define the cloud, or is it what is the business value, right? So, and just knowing how you bounce.
The two things hang together.
I agree with what he's saying.
And separate.
IT as a service, because it's more than just infrastructure. It is more than fundamentally cost. I agree that cost is absolutely one of them. But I would beg to differ that I could call out many examples that when you start making information and data available in real time that couldn't be made in traditional IT silo sense, that's not about cost. That's about the ability to make decisions to action, to drive revenue, to do things in a way that either drives customer satisfaction or so on. So I think we need to step back and say elasticity, flexibility, right? IT as a service, call it new fulfillment models, right, of IT components and services. Putting it back to it, it depends on the dimension of what they're at. Cost is always what's going to get you in the door that's going to justify it. So I'm with him. But he also said scale when he used, your example was scale. Scale could mean a lot of different things. It can mean margin, all right? It can mean growth efficiency. And then when you take your CapEx versus OpEx example, well, financial models that give me the flexibility to require less capital investment, right, to shift my financial model and my earnings could be a whole different business value paradigm, right, especially as a publicly traded company, if I have been doing massive hundreds of millions of dollars data center type spend that I'm now shifting. So I think coming back to it, I would agree that IT as a service, if I sort of recap what he's saying, I would state that the business value is tying to what layer of the capability are you attacking? Is it the financial model? Is it speed? Is it cycle time? Is it scale? Right? Is it growth efficiency? Or is it, like in the case if I'm orchestrating new business processes now that allow me to either do new things, create new products and or deliver information in a different way, that's a fundamentally bigger different thing. And the only thing I would argue back and pose back is it's not just all about cost, because most funded programs usually does have a strategic intent. And that strategic intent could go to the way it shifts my financial model.
Yeah, what we're seeing too is this whole, and you said the word capability. I think from a business perspective, right, instead of saying IT, right, IT conjures up all sorts of typically negative things of, oh my golly, those are the guys that I got to stay away from because I need to get something done. And businesses are looking at, okay, and this is the other thing, it's kind of true. And this is why CSC has partnered with Cordys to be able to provide organizations on demand a set of capabilities to deliver not necessarily applications that I had to program and tinker with, but a set of kind of declarative interfaces that, okay, I need to do this process and I need to put it together in this particular way, and I need to hit the button, and it just needs to be able to kind of work. And I need to be able to replicate that for several of my different business units, and they're going to operate just a little bit differently, but a lot of that stuff is still pretty much the same. So it's a different mindset from a business perspective of I just need a set of capabilities to do my thing.
Cloud's not such a big deal in that context.
Right, yeah. The underlying technology is wicked hard and complex and everything like that, and companies up here provide it. But from a business perspective, the value is to be able to execute that process, that capability. I'm now providing them a capability as a service that they can consume very easily and very quickly. And they don't have to worry about whether I've got the patch levels right and whether it's an Oracle DB or whether it's Linux that, right? It's just a set of capabilities for them to do their job.
So then what I'm hearing is the main takeaway, the main value here is abstraction still. So now cloud into the mix, just like virtualization.
Yeah,
Huge abstraction.
Yeah, we like those terms, abstractions. It tends to, you know, when you actually get to the business, it's back to, I need to be able to process orders more, you know, I need to be able to do this particular thing. I don't necessarily care about all the stuff underneath it. If you provide me that in a way that I can get it on my credit card or I can get it through and I don't have to worry about it, I mean, that's why Salesforce has got 82,000 customers, 1.7 plus million users, right? It's because it's just really easy, it works, they don't have to worry about it.
Praveen.
You know, I would still stay that on the first principle that it's all about cost for a given.
I like that. Be steadfast.
For a given quality of service. What is the cost? You know, if I can get the best quality of service or the quality of service I need for my organization by having my own infrastructure in my organization's data centers, garages, whatever I call them, why would I go to somebody else and, you know, invest in building trust and what have you? Now, you know, we can get wrapped up in a lot of things which are changing, you know, so new collaboration models are emerging and, you know, there's no organization which is geographically centered in one area. I mean, we're global. IBM is the largest IT employer in India. And there are enabling technologies which are allowing that, as you alluded to. But ultimately, it's all about costs. I'll still distill everything down to cost.
I think you're all agreeing, but
no, I would take exception. Well, I would take exception with that in that what we've seen, right, ever since like the financial meltdown, yeah, everybody went cost crazy. But now what organizations are telling us is, yeah, it's got to be done at a lower cost, but that's just one side of the balance sheet, right? At the end of the day, companies only buy stuff for two reasons. One, if they have lower cost. Two, raise revenue, right? And if I can get them both in the same one, right? And that's where, yeah, cost takeout absolutely important. But we're now seeing, you know, how do I acquire a new business? How do I get out of another business? And if I got technologies that do that, those are, yeah, that's the costs, but it's a broader, but it's also about that revenue, right? You know, it's that profitability.
If it was only about cost, why would anyone ever buy a Mercedes versus a Ford? So it's about the perceived value.
He's thought of that one.
So there's a cost, which is one thing, which is what the actual parts or whatever infrastructure costs, and then there's a value, and a value can be a perceived value, and people are willing to pay for that perceived value for a reason. So businesses have a perceived value of certain things that are provided at that higher level. So if it was just always about the cost, then why would there ever be a premium on anything that's purchased?
So, Praveen, why?
I mean, if I could look as good in a Hyundai, why would I buy a Mercedes?
Why is,
you could look good.
But you could.
No, you could. I couldn't. You could.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before glorious consensus
there's a huge
breaks out, which we must never have on
there's
a
a market
panel.
for luxury goods all across the globe that are very
No,
successful.
I
think
a business is not investing in luxury goods. A business is investing to create shareholder value. And you know, I go back to the Airtel example. Verizon could not have operated in India and sold minutes for, you know, 0.01 cent a minute.
Right. Hey, Praveen, you know, agreed that cost would be at the top of the list, and that's one of the neat things about cloud. And sharing and automation are two of the things that really drive an order of magnitude in cost savings around cloud computing. But fortunately, there's some additional great benefits beyond cost. There are things you can do with cloud computing, business challenges you can meet that you just couldn't do before.
Yeah, I think you're all agreeing. I don't think you disagree with that at all.
No, I don't.
No, but we're just saying, but we are stating cost
Right.
is not the final answer.
Right.
Not that we're picking on them.
Right.
But cost is not the final answer. Cost is the fundamental equation to get, or fundamental barrier to get into the equation. But once you've got that solved, listen, the ability to leverage them to say, I can actually spin up a new system, which our platform runs on GoGrid, right? And for us to be able to get, no problem, a deal later, right? So, but you know, when you look at it, the time to market to spin that up was worth much more than whatever the cost factor was, okay? And that time to market means time to revenue, right? And that time to revenue, right, doesn't care about the cost. It'll care about the cost on the back end, but it doesn't care about the cost on the front end. The other part is the ability, you know, and you know, as I've become a bigger fan of Cordys, right, with it, for Kathy, is, you know, the ability to marry together different types of services and processes has been a huge barrier. Traditional workflow, traditional business process, man, all those types of things. have been limited because the fulfillment model, the service model behind it, was cost prohibitive, but it was also inelastic in nature. So now as these services can rise up, and now we have the ability to orchestrate them to do those different things, right? New products means new revenues. New markets, new customer acquisition means new revenues. More margin, more growth, more scale. So, and cost does have to help, like you said, on the balance sheet on the back end. But it can't be, it's the only thing. And the only reason I pose against that is we do not want to have people walking out of here saying that when they go to pitch the cloud to their enterprise CIOs and business side, it's, hey, cost is the reason why it's going to help you get started, but do you understand the intrinsic and qualitative and quantitative value of being able to go after new customers faster, make decisions faster? And that's why I would pose that how you position that to who is funding cloud, right, that they need to keep that in the equation.
Well, let's end the panel then with single sentences, because single sentences are always good, and we've got a long-suffering audience out there in the world and here. So one sentence, so for example, we seem to be agreeing consensually that cloud is an enabler. That was one of the themes. So if that were my sentence, we're going to end up with 6 that way. So I'm just going to say that cloud computing is an enabler, full stop. Let's see if we can give a takeaway that's true. It doesn't have to be the only truth. Just say one sentence that our audience can take away that's true about cloud computing.
Cloud computing makes IT simpler, faster, and better.
Tony.
Cloud's the new fulfillment model of the business.
Kathy.
It's an evolution in a way to create new business models.
It allows IT to partner with and support the needs of the business.
I'll just add some wisdom. Cloud computing will not deliver the cost today, but you have to become experts and you have to get your organizations used to it so that it'll deliver in the next 4 years, 5 years.
How was that a sentence? He's disqualified.
Yeah.
Let's say thank you in the time-honored fashion to John Keagy, to Tony Bishop. Time-honored fashion? No. John Keagy, Tony Bishop, Kathy Minter, Jay Noble, and Praveen Kankariya. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry to, really make you work, but you did wonderfully. Did they not do wonderfully? A second round of applause.